Welcome to today's video where we're going to be looking at ATEasy again. In this video, we'll be using the evaluation board and we're going to talk about drivers. The reason why we're going to talk about drivers is because when you first get started in ATEasy, this is actually where you're going to be spending a lot of your time because you're going to have to set up kind of your AT system and do all of your drivers before you can really start building your program and your tests. I know it might seem more exciting to jump into the tests and some of the tutorials, but let's first look at a driver. So that way we can get an understanding of what building your system's gonna look like and how you're gonna really be getting started out. And then we can move into our tests, our tasks, and we can do some of the tutorials that came with this device. But yeah, in this video, we're gonna do drivers. So let's jump on ATEasy here. Okay, so we're going to start out with our evaluation board plugged into the computer because we're going to use it as our license in this video. So yeah, you get the training version only that comes up with that. And then we can go ahead and just open a recent. Okay, so once you've either created your project or you've opened an existing project, you can get into the system and see your drivers. You can only load drivers in the system. You're not going to have any drivers that you pull in for your programs. Now, there's a couple of ways to make a driver. You can, insert an IVI driver. You can import a driver from a front panel, or you can import a LabVIEW virtual instrument. So these are ones where you can import like these existing drivers. You can also insert one of the existing drivers that were made by Marvin Test to go with any equipment. So yeah, you can use one of these, or your last option is to actually like create a new driver yourself. So we'll just call it driver 1, and within your new driver you've just created, you have your forms, commands, events, procedures, IO tables, variables, types, and your libraries. So an example of where you would need to pull in a library in your driver would be like if you wanted to use like a VisaCom object that was outside of using like Marvin Test's built-in hardware control. Another example of where you might want to pull in a library here is if you're interfacing with a database and you're like using the Open Database connection or the ActiveX one, the ADO, you would pull those in right here. That's where you might pull in a library within your driver. Because a lot of times you're going to pull in either your libraries here at the system level, or even sometimes you'll do it at the program level, but that's you won't do that nearly as often as you'll do it either at the system or the driver level. So you might be wondering, why would I need forms in a driver if it's for controlling instruments? And that's because drivers aren't just for controlling instruments. So a driver also can be used as just any reusable code. So like I just mentioned, where you might be connecting to a database isn't really an instrument. So yeah, you would use your drivers almost, think of them, if you're very familiar with VB.NET, like a class. So think of it like a class where it's just a block of reusable code that has its own variables. You can make these procedures public, you can keep them private. Same with your variables, you can have public and private variables within your driver. So just don't confuse drivers with just instruments. Like they're more than just instruments. It's kind of a beginner's mistake within ATEasy is thinking of drivers as only your instruments, because it's really more than just instruments. Okay, with the drivers, there's a little bit of a secret handshake you gotta know to be able to use ATEasy's built-in hardware manager, and it is that right-clicking on the driver in the workspace over here and then right-clicking on driver here is different. So if I right-click here and go to the properties, I get different properties than if I'm actually within the driver and go to the properties. In here is where I'm going to be able to set up that interface so that way ATEasy itself can handle the connection. For our trainer, the connection is on the USB. So, and it is a USB test and measurement. Our terminator is a new line feed. You have a couple of options for your terminators. You can have just a carriage return, and a new line feed, a dot, or none. Other will also allow you to define that later. So we're going to just use a new line feed. Now we can go here and set our properties, and on our interface, go to USB and configure it to the, so we'll configure it to this GT98901 that's showing up because I have it plugged into the system. So now we are configured where ATEasy will make that connection. Okay, so now that we've configured our device, let's go ahead and build our first IO table. We're just going to do a query string. So whenever I call it like query string, what I'm expecting is to send a string and receive a string back. So let's go ahead and enter an IO table underneath and name it query string or just query s. We need to insert 4 operations within this. So let's just go ahead and insert those 4 operations. We're going to have an output because we got to build our output buffer, and it is going to be a parameter as ASCII. So yeah, now we need to send that buffer. And then we expect to receive something back. So we're going to change this one to a receive. We want to input, so we have our input buffer as a ASCII return, and we expect a string. So there we go. That's going to be our IO table for query string. Now we can go build a command with this. If you're familiar with any instrument, it's going to have that identifier, that IDN command. So let's go ahead and build that command. So we'll just name this guy IDN. We're going to insert our IO table here with our string that we expect. So that's star IDN question mark and attach procedure. So now we have that query string attached to this command, and it'll do that. And we can keep reusing that query string as we build our commands, or we can change it if we want it to return a value or something like that. So we could build like a query value or however you might want to do it. So now we're going to go into our program, and we're going to actually use this command real quick, so that way we can see what it does. So let's just go into this untitled test here, and we'll just have a message box that returns that driver. So one of the nice things once we build these drivers with the commands is you can just right click, go to driver, and use that and close it. Okay, so now we can launch this, and we'll just full screen it, click start. And there we go. We got a message box that has that return string from our little piece of equipment here. Okay, so let's enter another IO table, send string, so that way we're only going to send and we're not expecting a return, or we'll just ignore what return we get. And then we're going to do a procedure. So let's insert an IO table after, send string, and then we need to insert an operation. We need our output buffer, and we need our send. So yep, we just like last time where we built our output buffer, we sent it, we received, and then we returned it. This time we just need to build our buffer and send our buffer. So we'll just change this one to send, and the output is, again, we're going to expect it as a parameter. So I didn't mention this before, that parameter is what tells us like, hey, this function needs something in it. So we need to set it as a parameter. You could do constants in here as well, especially if you want to build IO tables that are doing specific things. These, what I'm doing right now, are making generalized IO tables that I can reuse over and over again. So now we're going to go make a procedure, and within this procedure, we're going to use that send string IO table. So this one, we're going to call it buzz 3x. Okay, so if we pull up the manual for the control board here, or for the demo board here, we have a buzzer right here on the board that we can command. As we can see, the buzz command is a either a set or a query, where you can do buzz question and you'll get a response of is it buzzing or not. And then the other two are to set it. So you can set. So let's use this IO table we have, which is send string buzz on, and we need to close that string. Okay, we're gonna need to do that a couple of times. So now we just turned on the buzzer. Let's delay 150 milliseconds, and then we can turn off the buzzer and delay, let's say, 300 milliseconds. Okay, so now we want to do that 3 times. Okay, so now now we have this procedure we can call. So the procedure is going to send these strings to the instrument, and think of this like these procedures, you can use them to do your setups or your tests, like, hey, I need to set up my oscilloscope back here that's to be ready for this test, and then query it and get a response. So this is where you'd use your procedures to kind of set up to do like a particular test. Or again, you can use these procedures more in a more generalized purpose of, say, like, oh, I'm going to send these 3 strings, and so yeah, these procedures and IO tables, you can really use them however you want, and you're going to build your own style as you get into ATEasy. This is one of those things where you have like a lot of power to do things in different ways. You know, the 1,000 ways to skin a cat, for example. So let's actually go ahead and try out this procedure now. So our procedure, we could make this procedure public, and then we can call it from outside, or we can, again, make another command and attach the procedure to it instead. So let's insert a command after and just call it buzz test. Okay, and this time, instead of attaching the IO table, we're going to attach that procedure we just created. Okay, so now that we got the procedure added, let's we'll go in here and add it, but also let's give this driver a more useful name, because you noticed when I right-clicked and added that driver, it didn't it just said driver 1. Let's just call this GT board. Okay, so now we have like a more useful name to our driver. Go away, and we'll do that buzz test instead. So yeah, GT board buzz test. Yeah, so your driver names, how you name them in the beginning, is how they'll show up here with your driver commands. So we'll run this, and you should be able to hear that buzzer. So yeah, it beeped 3 times. You know, I made those generalized IO tables that we can just use any way we want. So you might be asking yourself, well, what if I want to do all of this in the test? That's great. You can do that. So you can, well, let's not insert it below. Let's insert it after. So insert drive command after, and let's just call it that send string, and it'll now allow us to attach that IO table of send string to it. And now, instead of using this procedure we just used, we can now go in and do the send string, and we can enter our command that we want to enter. So we'll, it was buzz on, delay, and we could just copy that and just say off. So this will do relatively the same thing within the test. So we can pull that out. And again, I prefer to keep the IO tables and the procedures private and just use the commands to get them out of the driver. But you can make these things public and use them direct. So there we saw it just beeped one time instead of the 3 times. So you can always bring these manual ones out, but when you do that, when you start sending a lot of Skippy commands through the program and the tests and in your events and stuff, it starts to get harder to read. It starts to make that code a little harder to read. So I definitely, best practice, kind of recommend keeping sending those Skippy commands within the driver, and just having commands that you pull out. And again, you can make those procedures public if you want to pull them out from the driver, but I prefer to just call them as commands. The other nice thing with the commands, as you saw, is I can right-click and enter them, but the other thing you can do is just type out your driver, and then it'll start to have that IntelliSense where you can call one of these. So yeah, I hope that gives you a good understanding of the drivers. Okay, so we got our first little bit of exposure to the demo board here, but we really dove into like what a driver is and how we can use one. I feel like the driver is really that first fundamental step that you got to get a good grasp on with ATEasy before you continue on. One of the biggest struggles for me when I was first starting out was really utilizing the drivers properly. I wanted to just do everything in the test and in the events at the beginning, and I didn't want to utilize the drivers. But that was a huge mistake, a huge beginner's mistake. So it's definitely something I wanted to touch on early on in my series that I'm doing on this before we start diving too deep in here. Kind of laying some of that fundamental groundwork before we dive in too deep. I'll definitely be doing some more videos on this guy on the channel, so that way we can go through some of the tutorials and just use some of the other IO on here where we can simulate a test. Once we're done going through the demo board, we'll probably do a video series on this test set again. I know I did a video on it quite a while ago, showing how I test this product that I sell. We can use ATEasy to actually build like an application for it. I know I already have one that I did in Visual Studio, but I think for the channel, this would be a good exercise on like how ATEasy can be used in a real world example that I could actually share with you guys. Because normally the stuff I do in ATEasy, I can't share with you because it's for another business. And so this is one of the few times where I can actually showcase something real world for you that's you know, not hidden behind you know, the agreements I have with other businesses. So yeah, I hope you guys liked today's video. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, I've made a playlist that you should be able to find in the description of the ATEasy series, so that way you can just follow along. There's only a couple of videos now, but I'll be doing more, and as I do more, that playlist will have more videos. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.